The morning Grace silenced her mother's third call, she was laughing. She did not know it then. She would not understand it until much later, until she was sitting on a cold hospital floor in Enugu, holding a bag of her mother's things, a bag that still smelled like the shea butter her mother rubbed into her elbows every night before bed. But that morning in her Lekki apartment, with Daniel across the table and wine in the glasses and the city noise rising softly outside, Grace was laughing and her mother was dying and the phone was face down on the table and everything felt fine. Daniel had found her 3 years before that morning. She was at a work event in Victoria Island, standing near the window with a glass of water she was too nervous to drink, wearing a blue dress her mother had saved for 2 months to buy her. He walked over like a man who had never once been told no. He was tall and smooth and certain of himself in a way that felt, at 23, like strength. He smelled expensive. He said her name like it was something worth saying. Her mother did not trust him from the first visit. Margaret was a woman who had raised Grace alone in Enugu after Grace's father left when Grace was 4. She had sold fabric in the market for 19 years. She had walked Grace to school every morning until Grace was old enough to walk herself, and then she had stood at the gate watching until Grace turned the corner. She was not a woman who said things without reason. When she met Daniel and came back to the kitchen to help Grace with the stew, she said very quietly, "There is something in that boy's eyes that is not honest." Grace told her she was being dramatic. She chose Daniel over her mother's instinct that day. She kept choosing him. Every time her mother called and Daniel was present, she shortened the call. Every time her mother asked to visit Lagos, Grace found a reason it was not a good time. Every time her mother sent a voice note full of love and village news, Grace listened to half of it and set it aside. It was not that she did not love her mother. It was that Daniel had a way of making her feel that the woman she had been before him, the girl from Enugu, the fabric seller's daughter, was something to be managed rather than celebrated. He never said it plainly. He said it in the silences after she spoke about home. He said it in the way he looked past her mother during the one visit that did happen, never once asking Margaret a question, never once getting up to greet her properly. He said it in the words, "those people," when her aunt called, and Grace had heard it so many times she had begun to hear it too. Auntie Rita called on a Wednesday evening, then again, then a third time. Grace silenced every call. She did not know that her mother had collapsed in the market that Tuesday afternoon. She did not know that Margaret had been complaining of chest tightness for 3 weeks, but had told nobody because she did not want to worry Grace. She did not know that her mother had asked a woman in the next store to please call Grace's number, and the woman had tried twice and gotten no answer. She did not know any of this because she was at dinner in her Lekki apartment, and Daniel was telling a story about his business trip to London, and she was laughing, and her mother was dying, and the phone was face down on the table, and everything felt fine. Margaret died on Thursday morning at 6:42. She was alone in the hospital room. The nurse said she had been asking for Grace through the night. Auntie Rita came to Lagos on Thursday afternoon. She did not call again. She took a bus and then an Uber, and she stood at Grace's door with her hands shaking and her eyes already emptied out by grief. When Grace opened the door and saw her aunt's face, she felt the first edge of it, that cold, specific dread that arrives before understanding, the body knowing what the mind refuses. She took the phone. She read the message. She read it again. And then she was on the floor. Daniel stood in the hallway and watched. He did not come to her. He did not kneel. He did not say her name. He stood with his arms at his sides and watched Grace fall apart on the floor of the apartment he had convinced her to move into. The apartment that was 40 minutes from the bus park. The apartment where her mother had sat stiffly on the sofa during her one visit because Daniel had not offered her a seat at the dining table. He stood and watched, and Grace, even in that moment, through the sobs tearing up through her chest, registered his stillness, registered it and filed it away somewhere behind the grief, somewhere she would open later. She traveled to Enugu the next morning. Daniel did not offer to come. He said he had meetings. He said he would transfer money for the funeral expenses. He transferred half of what he promised and went quiet. Enugu received her the way home always receives the child who has been away too long, with a familiar ache, with faces that remembered her when she was smaller, with the smell of red earth after rain. Her mother's house was exactly as Margaret had left it. The bed made, the Bible on the side table, a half-finished letter on the writing desk, a letter addressed to Grace, 3 paragraphs long, written in Margaret's careful, looping handwriting. Grace sat on Margaret's bed and read it and could not finish it. She folded it and put it in her bag and carried it back to Lagos. She buried her mother on a Saturday. Daniel did not come. He called on Sunday evening. He said he was sorry for her loss. He said it the way a person says it to a colleague, measured and sufficient and already moving on. Grace said nothing. She sat with the phone against her ear and looked at her mother's photograph on the wall, the one from Grace's graduation, her mother beaming in her best blouse, the blouse she had bought second-hand from the market and ironed 4 times before the ceremony. In the photograph, her eyes were full of love, so plain and uncomplicated that she could not understand how she had ever looked away from it. She asked Daniel one question. "When I was on the floor, why didn't you come to me?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Grace, you are very emotional right now. This is not the time." She ended the call. She did not call back. She blocked his number 3 days later, quietly, like her mother had always done difficult things, without announcement, without drama, without waiting for permission. It took 6 months for the full shape of what Daniel had been to become clear. A mutual friend told her carefully over pepper soup in Port Harcourt that Daniel had been engaged to another woman during the entire 3 years they were together. The woman lived in Abuja. The engagement had been known in certain circles. Daniel had simply kept the circles separate. Grace sat with this information and felt something settle in her chest. Not surprised, not quite. Her mother had seen it. Her mother had said it in that kitchen on the first visit. There is something in that boy's eyes that is not honest. Margaret had known. She had known and she had loved Grace anyway, and she kept calling. The last call was the one Grace never picked up. Grace went back to Enugu every month after the burial. She sat in her mother's house. She read the letter slowly, sentence by sentence, until she could get through all 3 paragraphs without stopping. The letter said nothing dramatic. It said, "I am proud of you." It said, "I only want you to be loved well." It said, "Whatever you choose in this life, I am always on your side." Her mother had written those words the week before she collapsed, in the same handwriting she had watched fill her school report cards, the same hand that had braided her hair every Sunday morning for the first 16 years of her life. She sat in that house and understood, with a grief that did not shrink with time, only became more familiar, what she had spent 3 years slowly setting aside. Not just her mother, herself. The version of herself that her mother had known and kept safe and believed in. The girl who wore the blue dress her mother had saved 2 months to buy her. The girl who was loved completely and did not understand that completely was rare. Daniel was somewhere in Lagos or Abuja or London. It did not matter. He had already taken everything he had come for. Grace kept her mother's photograph. She kept the letter. She put them both in a frame above her desk in the new apartment she moved into. Smaller, quieter, her own. Some mornings she looked at that photograph for a long time before she began her day. Her mother's eyes, full and steady and warm, looking directly at her, the way they always had, the way Grace had not always looked back.